Customer lifetime value is something that is important for a number of reasons in your business. Not the least of which is that it improves the overall worth of your business. But there's two things that I'm going to harp on that I want you to think about when it comes to customer lifetime value and the loyalty of your customer base. The first thing is, if you know what your customer lifetime value is, you know what you can spend to acquire a customer. Now, Paula and Michael will tell you a lot about customer acquisition cost, right? Because they spend a lot of time talking to their clients because they're in the online lead generation business. They spend a lot of time talking to their clients about how much it's going to cost to acquire a new customer. If you know what your client lifetime value is, if you know what your customer lifetime value is, you know what you can spend to attract a new customer. So I'm going to give you an example right now from my business, my old business, not Exit Success Lab, but my old consulting business, my solo practice consulting business, and we'll see if it resonates with you. So in my solo consulting business, I started that business in 2008, okay? We are now in 2024. I have 5 clients, 5 that have been with me from 2008 to today. Okay? Which when I tell people that, they find it amazing. I actually am incredibly grateful for those 5 people, but those clients have a very, if I took what they spend with me and I averaged it out, that would be my client lifetime value if those were my only clients, right? But I also have clients that have been with me for a year, that were with me for 2 years, in some cases, thankfully very few, 6 months or less, right? If I average what those folks spend with me and put it all together, I would get a number as to what my client lifetime value is. Let's say that the lifetime value of a client for me in that business is, for argument's sake, let's say it's about $25,000, okay? Which for that business is pretty close to accurate, because those people who've been with me for all of these years, it's a lot more. The people who've been with me for a shorter period of time, it's a lot less. But let's say my average client lifetime value is $25,000. Is it worth it for me to spend $10,000 to acquire a new client? If my average client lifetime value is $25,000, is it worth it to me to spend $10,000? I would say yes, right? My metric is this. I want to my goal is, now let me take you back one step. My goal is to break even on client acquisition in the first year. Okay? So in that business, my goal was always to break even on client acquisition in the first year. So I had different tiers of service, and the lowest tier of service in that business was $12,000 a year. Okay? So I know that the average client would stay with me about 38, 39 months, a little over 3 years. So for me, my goal was to spend 1/3 of my client lifetime value maximum to acquire a client. So I can do a lot with $12,000 in client acquisition. Why is this important? Well, it helps me understand what the investment required will be to acquire a new client, but also the more I can spend to acquire a new client, the higher my client lifetime value, the more I can spend to acquire a new client, the harder it is to compete with me, right? So if you have significant recurring revenue built into your business, it creates higher client lifetime value. And if you have higher client lifetime value, you can spend more to acquire a client. Randy, I'll get to your question in just one sec. You don't have to spend that amount of money. In fact, it's better to keep customer acquisition costs down. But if you know what your client lifetime value is, then you can set a target for how much you will spend to acquire that new client, so that you can make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can afford to do to acquire new clients. Randy, your question, please.
Yeah, so when I listen to you, I get what you're saying, but it feels like, and you can correct me, it feels like that's making a presumption that the average lifetime value is fairly stagnant, that each client has a similar lifetime value. In my business, I have categories.
Right.
I have, so knowing the type of client you want, I know you've taught us that, but I'm going to spend less time and effort on the lower categories. I might still bring them in as clients than I am on the higher categories, if that makes sense.
Okay. You are, this is why we missed you so much, because you've taken me right where we want to go. So I truncated what I was saying to be very general. So if you break down your clients by category, you need to have client lifetime value by category. You can't do it overall for the entire business, because you're going to have different clients, right? Different categories of clients. So you do need to break it down by category. Now, here's the thing, okay? As your business becomes more complex, you need to find a way for the cheaper clients, you need to find a way to automate the attraction of those clients so that it doesn't require as much of your time, and so that you can manage the spend, okay? So one of the things that Nicola and I were talking about with Paula and Michael, from Leadsmith, is, okay, with online advertising, for example, right? So for Randy, let's take the case of a gateway product or service, okay? So let's take I'll use an example from our business so I don't pick on anybody here. So in our business, for the business owners, what we want to do is, I want to do an upfront market assessment for those business owners, so that we can determine what the market value for their business might be, an approximation. So let's say I met with Paula and Michael, and I said, here's what that market assessment is worth. We'll do the market assessment for $3,000. So because I'm okay with just attracting a new client at break even, I would say to them, here's our budget for advertising plus your fees. It's, $3,000 per client. I want to acquire 10 new clients a month. So our budget is $30,000 in online advertising, so that we acquire those clients at break even. But Randy, that's just for acquiring that specific type of client, right? Now, if I look then, and if I pivot and I say, now attracting professionals into our ESL ecosystem, the professionals pay $1,000 enrollment fee, and that's what I want to use as my break even number. I can't afford then to advertise for professionals, because I know advertising is a relatively higher ticket proposition. So what I need to do with professionals is, I can hire a $25 an hour telemarketer to bang the phones and call professionals, put them in a breakfast, and I can get 50 of them in a breakfast, and I can close 3 or 4 or 5. So I close 5 from that breakfast. That's $5,000. So my cost of acquisition for one of those clients is $1,000. I acquire 5. I can pay $5,000 for that telemarketer for the month, right? So for that specific service line, my client lifetime value, let's say, is $1,000, but my acquisition is gonna be $1,000 for that person. So I'm gonna close 5 every time we run the breakfast. I can spend $5,000 a month to acquire that client. But for the other client that I'm working with Paula on, I can spend 30, because I know I'm going to close 10 of those, and they're going to be higher ticket value. So you have to segment your focus on cost of acquisition based on the client type. So that leads to your point. But the client lifetime value is what should determine what you will spend. Paula, to you.
I've been trying to play with that mute button and like waiting patiently for the moment. Um, so yeah, I think to Dave's point on how he's answering you, Randy, basically you're building different lead generation funnels. You're building one funnel for a higher end ticket value, and you're going to spend potentially a lot of money in advertising, and then you're spending you're building a lower end cost type lead generation funnel. But it's really important to understand, right? Like just to Dave's point is, what do they cost me? Because then you can back into what are you willing to pay for it. And then advertising is one piece, and there's so many other mechanisms out there to be able to do this, from marketing, from calling, and all those other pieces. But a lot of the times we encounter is that many times our customers, they don't really know what it's worth, right? Like they don't know what the the cost to acquire, like, first they don't know the cost to acquire customers, they don't know what they're comfortable with, and the best way to do it is how much is that customer worth to you. So a lot of times people will just think, oh, it's, I get X amount of money, let's say $1,000 a month from them, so that's it. And sometimes the cost to get them is going to be higher than $1,000, so you really should think about it from a lifetime value, because you're probably, I don't know in your case, but you don't get paid like once a month. Maybe you get paid over a period of time. So it's really this idea of, it's very mathematical and what you can do. And if you can understand that really well, then it's sort of like, why not? Why wouldn't I spend as much as I can if I know that I'm going to get a return on investment that's very healthy for each one of these clients? The more the spend, the more clients you get. Right. So it's really a math number. This whole thing is all a mathematical equation.
And that's not, thank you, Paula. And today we're not doing math. I promise there'll
Yeah.
be no math today. So today what we're going to do is today what I want to focus on is I want to focus on the time you're investing. And I want to think about the lifetime value of your clients and your referral sources based on the time you're investing. First, Randy, was that helpful? Did we answer the question that you had or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So our focus of the presentation today is on the time you're investing. So let me share my screen with you and quickly not quickly, but and bring this into context. And I want you to keep in mind that this is not the only time we're ever going to talk about this, okay? This is such a foundational concept that you'll hear me talk about this over and over and over again. So today we're talking about how to build deep relationships, ask your clients and evangelists for money and have them love you for it. So what do I mean by that? First, let me explain what evangelists are, okay? So, in my language, clients are people who invest money. They pay us for services. Okay. Evangelists are people who've never experienced our services, yet they still promote us. They've never invested a dollar with us, yet they still promote us. And the example I give all the time is a criminal defense attorney, right? Paul knows one of my dear friends, one of my closest friends, Brian Tannenbaum. Brian is a criminal defense attorney, but he's also a Florida bar ethics attorney. And what an ethics attorney does is when one or more of the 90,000 plus lawyers here in Florida runs afoul of the rules for practicing law, an ethics attorney is somebody who specifically focuses on defending those knuckleheads from either being disciplined or, in worst case scenario, losing their license, losing their law license. I'm not a lawyer, but I know a lot of lawyers, and a lot of lawyers come to me for help. So when lawyers do something stupid like borrow money from their clients' escrow accounts to pay their own bills and they get caught, I get that phone call a lot of times. And they tell me, crying on the phone, I don't know what I'm going to do. I introduce them to Brian because Brian is a Florida bar ethics attorney. He can defend them and he's a miracle worker. He's prevented a lot of really shitty lawyers from losing their licenses. Okay. That's what he does. Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't help those people. I've never used Brian's services either on the criminal defense side or on the ethics side, thank goodness. But I refer Brian work. I refer him 5 or 6 matters a year. And so I'm an evangelist for Brian because I'm telling you about him right now. I believe in him. He's fantastic at what he does. So I'm evangelizing for him. You have people in your business who are evangelists for you. They've never used your services, but they promote you like crazy. So our presentation today is focused on how you can build these deep relationships in the most efficient and effective way possible, both from a client perspective and from an evangelist perspective. Your clients who refer business to you, they're still clients. Anybody who's ever invested in you is always going to be referred to by me as a client. Even if they refer 20 people to you, in my mind, they're still a client because they've experienced your offerings. They've experienced your products, your services, okay? So we're talking about lifetime loyalty today. Why now? Why this? Why you? Well, there's 3 reasons, okay? I want you to make more money directly. So asking your existing clients for more money, I want to show you how to do that in a way that's not intrusive. Second is more indirect money. I want you to be delivering so much value, to be so remarkable that people talk about you to other people, and those people fall out of the sky into your lap to work with you. That's indirect money, right? And then I want to show you a way to do exactly what Randy was talking about, to lower your labor intensity, right? So that you don't have to work as hard to build the lifetime loyalty, so that you can set up systems and processes that will do that for you. So that's our focus today. All right. So there's 3 ways that everyone here gets more direct money. This is it. This is how we get more direct money. We solve problems for people and they give us money. We help people achieve their goals and they give us money. Or we fill a need and people give us money. This is it. It's what we do. Nothing else. You're either solving problems, helping people achieve goals, or filling needs. The indirect money to us comes from more referrals, okay? More introductions, or by building a bigger brand. Now, who wants to tell me, wants to take a guess at what the difference between a referral and an introduction is? Shout it out if you think you know. What's a referral compared to an introduction?
A referral includes a recommendation.
Ah, Randy, thank you. Exactly right. A referral is me bringing somebody to your office and saying, you need to work with Eileen. If you don't work with Eileen, you're crazy. And I'm not leaving until you work with Eileen. That's a referral. An introduction is meet my friend Eileen. She can help you get a job. Have a nice day. That's an introduction, right? A referral is you doing everything you can to help these 2 people get together because you passionately believe they can solve a need, right? You want to get more clients on LinkedIn, you got to work with Phil. Just there's no 2 ways about it. In fact, if you're a professional and you're on LinkedIn, you got to work with Phil. If you're not working with Phil, you're not taking full advantage of LinkedIn. If you want to learn how Phil has helped me, I'm happy to tell you. I'm happy to set up a meeting for the 3 of us, and I will show you what Phil showed me, and then you should work with Phil immediately after that, right? If you come to that meeting, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you work with Phil. That's a referral. If I just say to you, this is Phil. He's great with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. He can help you get some clients. I think that's an introduction, right? If you're going to do a referral, you need to recommend the person. You need to do everything you can. And you shouldn't refer people who you're not passionate about, right? Like if I send you to Paul, Paul is going to take great care of you, I promise, because I know I've seen Paul since 2000. I've known Paul since 2008. I've seen Paul take care of clients since 2008, solve all their telecommunications needs. I've seen Paul help people that aren't even his customers. So I know Paul's going to provide you with great service, right? I am passionate about Paul and what Paul does. I'm passionate about Phil and what Phil does. I am going to do everything I can to make sure that you guys work with them if I introduce you to them. That's a referral. If I'm just sending you over to somebody, that's valuable, but that's just an introduction. Yes, Philip.
There's another one called a name drop, where you're speaking to someone and they're not they're sort of not massively comfortable about doing an introduction or a referral, and you say something like, "Oh, we're speaking to Dave Lorenzo, and he thought it'd be a good idea to touch base and blah 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 blah." So that's the sort of the third level.
Right, right. I don't I think that's valid. I don't talk about a lot with my clients because I don't place a lot of value on that. Just like I don't place a lot of value on see if this resonates with you. And a lot of big firm people do this. Oh, you want a referral? I'm going to give you 3 names. Right? Giving people 3 names is basically, I'm going to date myself now. It's like basically giving them the phone book, right? It's like here's a list of people, just call them. Like if you don't feel comfortable enough to do a solid recommendation for someone, don't give them 3 names. It's not helpful to you, it's not helpful to the other person. If you're concerned about betting your reputation on someone, you shouldn't be putting their name out there at all, right? So I would say, all right, here's what I need to do. I need to find out what your interests are, what your needs are, and I will match you with the person that I know that will best meet your needs, depending on, your personality type and the type of work that you need. If I don't know someone, I'm going to say, listen, I've never worked with this person, but I've heard good things. Let me make an introduction. But because I worked with Phil, because I worked with Paul, I know these guys can do everything they say they're going to do and more. I'm passionate about referring them. So for me, the difference between a referral and an introduction is exactly what Randy said. It's a recommendation, and it's a full-throated, passionate recommendation. All right. We're going to spend a lot of time in ESL talking about lowering your labor intensity. So on your way to building a company or building an organization, you need to think about the financial investment you make in things, and then you need to think about the investment of your time. And you, as the CEO of your business or your firm or your practice, whatever profession you're in, whatever you want to say, you as the CEO of your business need to think about the level of labor intensity that you're putting into things and the return on investment of your labor intensity. Okay? Right now, because Exit Success Lab isn't even a year old, it's virtually a startup. And Nicola and I are doing all the work in Exit Success Lab. So for us, we're putting a lot of labor intensity into things that other people will eventually be doing. So, for example, we're in the process now. I'm putting together. I'm going to finalize today a job description for an inside salesperson, because I am putting way too much labor intensity on the inside sales aspect of ESL. And we're at a point now where we can afford to bring on an inside salesperson. So I know that the labor intensity that I'm investing in that inside sales process right now is too high. I need to reduce it. And the way I'm going to reduce it is by bringing somebody on board to do that part of the work that is better suited for someone else. So you have to determine where it's best for you to invest your labor intensity. We don't think about our time as CEOs. We don't think about our time as an investment. We just think to ourselves, well, there's 24 hours in a day. I really only need 4 hours of sleep, so I can spend 20 hours working. Yeah, okay, you can do that for a little while, but that's a recipe for a heart attack and disaster, right? So you need to, and it's not the most productive thing for you. If you're a detail-oriented person, then your labor intensity is best focused on running the systems and practices that keep your business moving forward. If you're a creative person, your labor intensity is best spent on doing the big picture things that will drive your business forward. So lowering your labor intensity in your practice will lead to a greater perception of value for you from your business. So right now, if you're a sole practitioner and you lower the labor intensity required to attract clients, your business will be providing you with a lot more satisfaction. It will be providing you with a lot more opportunity to do probably what you went to law school to do if you're a lawyer. So it'll provide you with a greater perception of value of your business. It will also, by the way, if you also figure out how to develop lead generation and business development systems, it will make your practice worth more to someone else. So if you wanted to, if you're a lawyer or if you're a solo consultant right now and you wanted to sell your practice to somebody, if the business development aspect of your practice is dependent upon you, you got nothing to sell there. Okay? If you have a business development system that brings prospects to your door and you close them, that's a different story. You can probably bring on another lawyer, another consultant, teach them how to close the business, teach them how to fulfill the processes, and the perception of value of your business will be higher. If you lower your labor intensity, you can command a fee premium, and you can also generate more opportunity for work because you'll have more time to spend with your existing clients. And there's magic involved with spending more time with existing clients. It results in more money to your business, to your practice. What we're all going for when it comes to the lead generation aspect of our business is we're all going for love at first sight right now. We want people to hear us speak, to read our content, to talk to us on the phone and fall in love with us. And that's not what we should be going for. What we should be going for is attraction at first sight. Or put a better way, we should be going for generating interest at first sight. Nobody's going to fall in love with your business or fall in love with you as their lawyer or fall in love with you as their provider of exotic meat. Nobody's going to fall in love with you the first time they meet you. They will, if you do things correctly, become interested in you and what you have to say and what you do. So I love this quote by Benjamin Franklin. If you would be loved, love and be lovable. Your goal for all the people who you come in contact with who are leads is for you to generate goodwill. Okay, that's the love part. And then be a kind, be a benevolent, be a receptive, open person. And that's the be lovable part. And that's what this is all about. That's what expanding the lifetime value, increasing the lifetime value, increasing lifetime loyalty is all about. So now we're going to get into the how to do this. And this is all about communication. It's how you communicate with leads. It's how you communicate with the people that you follow up with. So from a lead perspective in general, these are the foundational pillars of a message that you create that will lead to loyalty from your clients, from your prospects who will become clients. It will lead to loyalty from your current clients. It will lead to loyalty from your evangelists, from your referral sources. So if you want to think about this a different way, I want you to think about it from the perspective of people that you meet in a networking setting, right? You meet these people and you've generated some interest, some attraction from them, but they're not ready to do business with you because they need to learn more. Here's how you're going to communicate with them. Here are the tenets of communication that will help you deepen those relationships. It's primacy, recency, frequency, and emotional resonance. So the first thing they hear, the last thing they hear, something they hear often, something they hear that strikes an emotional chord in them. If you want examples, if you've ever seen me speak in front of an audience, in my message, I incorporate the outcome I want into the first thing I introduce to people, into the last thing they hear before I leave the stage or finish speaking. I repeat the message that I want them to take home over and over again. That's the frequency. And I tell stories that connect my message with the emotions that I want them to feel. Okay? Let's take a look at each of these real quick. Primacy. Being first. If you want to connect and develop a relationship that will lead to lifetime loyalty, you want to connect with an audience, you should deliver a new idea. Now, a new idea is something that the audience, the target client, hasn't heard before. So your audience can be an audience of one, or it can be an audience of 1,000 people. So if I'm sitting down and I'm having lunch with Randy, and Randy says to me, she gives me the whole lowdown on her practice. She gives me the whole lowdown on what's going on and what she's interested in and what clients she wants to get more of. And I say to her, Randy, it strikes me that you're really good at what you do and you could work with sophisticated clients. Do you enjoy working with sophisticated clients? And she says, yes. And I say to her, why are you working with so many of these, smaller clients? Why aren't you working with Fortune 500 clients? And she says, well, because, I built my business going to Chamber of Commerce meetings and I meet a lot of these smaller clients and, they have money. So I took the money and I'm working with them. And now I'm so busy working with these smaller clients that I don't know how to get back to working with bigger clients. And I say to her, okay, Randy, what if you did this? What if you spent initially carve out 5 hours a week, block it on your calendar, and you just spend that 5 hours targeting the Fortune 500 clients that you can do work for based on past work that you've done. And here are the 5 steps that you could take to do this. That to Randy is a brand new idea. To the dozens of other clients that work with me, it's not a new idea to them because they've heard it before. And to other people in the world, it's not a new idea. But to Randy, it's a new idea, right? So I'm the first person that shared this idea with her. And this may or may not be true. So don't go to Randy and go, really? You didn't know that? So this may or may not be true with Randy. I'm just giving you an example. So that idea is a new idea to Randy, right? So that new idea is going to stick with Randy. And while she's making dinner and while she's relaxing and having a cup of coffee with her friend, she's going to say, I heard this idea from this guy. What do you think about this? And she's going to talk about it. And the friend's going to go, that's interesting. Who's the guy that gave you that idea? So because I gave the new idea, I stay top of mind, right? Then Randy and I start working together. And Randy has success with that idea. So she comes back to me and she says, that worked really great. I got this other problem. And she comes to me for the other problem because I'm the new idea guy in her mind, right? So being first with a new idea can lead to lifetime loyalty. Also, being the known person in a niche market. If Nicola was here, she would say niche market, right? Being the person who dominates a niche market also is an example of primacy. When I started my solo consulting business, I worked exclusively with lawyers. Why did I do that? Because in 1 year, I was able to dominate the law firm market in South Florida and become known by a lot of lawyers as the go-to guy for business development help for lawyers and law firms. It was 2008. There were a lot fewer of the business development people for law firms back then. I was able to dominate that niche market. So I was the first person that they had heard of who was just focused on helping lawyers grow their business. I knew the bar rules related to advertising and marketing for lawyers in Florida. I could navigate them. And I was the person that they thought of first because I was dominant in that niche market. Being a contrarian is a fantastic way to establish primacy in people's minds. Now, here's the thing about being a contrarian. You can't be a contrarian and be a complete jerk, right? You can be a contrarian and be known as a contrarian, but still be a likable contrarian. So the example of a contrarian who's a complete jerk, anybody familiar with Andrew Tate? You know who Andrew Tate is? If you're not familiar with him, spend 2 minutes looking him up. He's a ridiculously misogynistic, like bordering on criminal guy who has a bazillion followers on like YouTube and TikTok and everything. He is a horrible, horrible person, but he sells stuff left and right to an audience because his contrarian point of view resonates with a bunch of misogynistic jerks who will give him money. Okay. That's not what I want you to be. I want you to be the contrarian who goes out and says things like, I used to say, hourly billing is something that all lawyers should avoid because it creates disalignment between the interests of the lawyer and the interests of the client. I don't work with people who bill on an hourly basis. I don't want to work with people who bill on an hourly basis. I help lawyers quit hourly billing like Alcoholics Anonymous helps drunks quit alcohol, right? That's a contrarian point of view, but I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not saying that you lawyers who are hourly billing, you're all a bunch of criminals. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a better way and you'll be more attractive to your clients if you figure out a way to bill on a value-based fee basis versus an hourly fee basis. And I don't want a million questions in the chat about that, what I just said. So please, I don't want to make this, I don't want to turn this into an hourly billing conversation. We can have that over a beer at an event sometime. It's just an example of being contrarian, okay? Also, commitment to something, sticking with something is a great way to make sure you're first. Now, what that seems like there's some dissonance there, right? How can you be committed to something and still be first? How can you be in something for the long term and still be first? Well, there was I made a statement at breakfast in Miami last month in Hallandale Beach. And I said, the minute you quit, you realize that you were very close to being successful, right? We always quit right before we're successful at something, right before the process kicks in and we're successful. That seems to be the moment where most people quit. The longer you stay at something, the more chance you give yourself to be introduced to someone who could be your next big client. So if you're focused on giving speeches as a lead generation methodology, the day you stop giving speeches is the day before you are going to meet your next big client, right? So if you remain committed to a process, you will be first to someone eventually, right? Joe DiMaggio had a saying, and it was actually it. The first time he was quoted about this was during a game where the Yankees were up by 11 runs, and DiMaggio was still playing center field. And a line drive was hit into the gap. DiMaggio went on a full-out sprint, laid out, dove, and made a diving catch. And he caught the ball as he was diving toward the left field side of center field, and he stood up and dusted himself off. The crowd went nuts. The left fielder came over and congratulated him on a great catch and said, "Hey, listen, we're up by 11 runs. You don't have to kill yourself. Why would you kill yourself and lay out like that and risk an injury?" And he turned to the left fielder and he said, "There's somebody in the stands who's never seen me play before, and this will be their first impression of me. I want them to understand how I play the game." That's the level of commitment that we need to have to what we do, because every time we're in front of somebody, even though it's our 100th time of doing something, it's the first time somebody's going to see us. So commitment can also help you be first. All right. Commitment can also help you with primacy. All right. Recency. So there's an expression, I think it's a Buddhist expression, that when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. Here's the thing. Like anybody who's had kids or who has a spouse or who's had a spouse, you know that repetition is your friend if you want to make something happen, right? So your ability to say something over and over again to people, maybe in different ways, maybe the same way, is critical to your ability to influence them. So if you want to increase lifetime loyalty, what you need is you need to be able to deliver your message over and over again. Here are the things you need to do in order to do that. First, you need access to the person. You need to be able to be considered a trusted advisor. You need to be able to connect with them at a level where you can give them advice on a regular basis, on a frequent basis. So I was a trusted advisor to a gentleman named Tim Lynch, who's the president of Offit Kerman, which is a good sized mid-Atlantic based law firm. They're actually in LA too now, but they're pretty much Maryland, Delaware, Virginia. They have an office in New York and North and South Carolina. And Tim was my client. And what I told Tim over and over again from the day that I met him was that the lawyer compensation program that they had set up was not in alignment with what their goals were. Their goals were to have every lawyer develop business, and they wanted every lawyer to develop at least enough business to cover the cost of that lawyer being in the law firm. So even quote unquote service partners, partners who were lawyers who just worked on things that other people gave them, we wanted the service partners, even them, to be productive and generate enough business to make them profitable. So at the time, the dollar amount that each lawyer cost the firm in hard costs was about $150,000, give or take. Okay. So they wanted each lawyer in the firm to be able to generate at least $150,000 in new business so that each lawyer would cover their own costs. And then those that were generating 3 million would, provide profit to the firm. Those that were service partners, at least they would still be cost neutral, and they would be profit centers as well. So what I said to Tim was, I said, listen, you're not rewarding these people. Everybody's paid on flat salary, and their bonuses are based on hours billed. I said, there's no incentive structure for these people to develop new business. You have to do one of two things or both. You have to either set a floor where if they don't generate $150,000 in business at a minimum, they'll be fired, or set an incentive program where those who generate $150,000 or more unlock a secondary incentive where everything they bring in over and above that, they get X number of dollars, or it unlocks a bonus structure. I said this to him when he first brought me in to develop a business development training program for the people in the firm. I said, if we don't tie compensation to this business development training program, it's not going to be as effective. It's not going to achieve the goals you want it to achieve. I said it to him on day one. He ignored me. I had exposure to him on a monthly basis. We met face to face in his office on a monthly basis. And over time, I started tailoring the message and delivering the message using examples over and over again, different ways. It took delivering that message no fewer than 18 times before he decided to change the compensation structure. And he said to me when he made the decision to do it, he said, I know you've said this to me a couple of times. He said, it's finally starting to resonate. I had said it to him 18 times. And in his mind, it was only a couple of times. So the recency effect, the repetition effect, is a function of, first, having access to that person to be able to deliver the message over and over again. Then second, having the credibility for them to take the message seriously. So in the Tim Lynch example, I mentioned it to him the first time when I first met him. I hadn't built up enough credibility for him to take me seriously with regard to that message yet. I had credibility in the business development space because he had seen me develop business for other firms, but I didn't have enough credibility in the compensation space yet. He had to see me do that, spend time with me. He had to realize that it was practically possible to do this. So I had to demonstrate to him that other firms had done it. It had to be practical advice. He had to understand that it was possible for him to do it. And then I had to be bold enough to ask him to make the change over and over and over again. As trusted advisors, we do that when we want our clients to do something that's good for them. We also need to do it with business development initiatives that are good for us. So there's a host of services you could deliver for your clients that would be beneficial, and you could get paid for delivering them. Your clients don't know about these services, so you need to start mentioning them. When I start a consulting engagement and when you onboard new clients, there should be a list of things those clients should do. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're only going to work on one right now, but you're going to need to do 2, 3, and 4 eventually. Well, as you're working on one, you need to continuously mention 2, 3, and 4, because that's what you're going to work on next. It's good for the client, and you're also going to get paid on it. So those of you who are IP attorneys, you're out there, you onboard the client, and the client comes to you because, let's say, they have a trademark they want to protect, right? And you're working with them, you do the trademark search, they decide it's worth protecting, you decide they can protect it, it's a good mark, you select the categories, you protect it, you begin the process of protecting it. As you're talking to them about protecting the trademark, you should be asking them what their goals are for using the mark, because that could lead to licensing down the road. And who can do the licensing for them? Why, you, as their trademark attorney, and you can get paid for doing the licensing. And you should also talk to them about monitoring the mark after it's protected. Why? Because if there's an infringement, you can write a cease and desist letter. And if you do litigation, you can be involved in making sure the infringement stops. And you can do that either through licensing or through filing suit, all of which you can get paid for. But in order to do that, you need the repetition of mentioning these things to them over and over again as part of their business strategy. And that's where the recency element comes into providing that message over and over again. Now let's talk about emotional resonance. When you're delivering a message to your clients, there needs to be emotional resonance associated with it. So you need to make the folks feel a certain way. And the way you make them feel a certain way is through making a genuine connection on a human level, differentiating yourself and your services, and by being intriguing. So these are the elements. Now I'm gonna stop the screen share, and I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about this, and then I'll take your questions about everything that we've talked about today. And this is an ongoing discussion that we're going to continue to have. When you are delivering a message to your clients, to your prospective clients, and there's emotional resonance associated with it, the clients are going to do two things. They're going to associate you with the emotion that they feel, and they're going to associate the potential outcome you can provide with the emotion that they feel. So I'll give you a couple of examples, and we can talk about what this means to you and your business as you're thinking about developing your business development strategies moving forward. If you want the easiest way to motivate somebody to do something, you can scare the crap out of them, right? So scaring the crap out of people works for certain things. So for example, you're going to see, and you're probably already seeing, a lot of political messaging now, right? We're going through the most consequential election of our lifetime, okay? I've been voting for 20 some odd years, and there wasn't ever an election that wasn't the most consequential election of my lifetime, right? Now, listen, you can tell me, hey, for these reasons, this election is more important, and that's fine. But the messaging of all political advertising these days is based on fear. They want you to act to move away from something. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, right? Contrast that with the messaging you get from a gym or a personal trainer. That message is all about moving you toward a goal, right? Moving you towards something that's good for you, moving you towards something that's beneficial for you. The way to make a real connection with people is not to just throw those emotions out there and hope that you can herd the cats in that direction because they're all going to feel something. The way for us to do it in a business development setting is for us to make that personal connection and for people to be able to put themselves in our shoes and move forward because they see themselves being driven by the emotions that are created. Here is an example. You've all heard the reason why I started my own business. Most of you have. If you haven't, I'll tell it in a truncated way. So I was a big ticket consultant for Gallup's consulting business. The bulk of my job was to develop new relationships with Fortune 100 clients, scope out consulting engagements, and get senior level executives to sign on the dotted line. Our minimum engagement fee was $1 million a year. I carried a book of business of 20 million bucks myself year over year. My team did over $250 million in annual revenue. And I was in the middle of doing an engagement for Pfizer that was worth $10 million for our firm when I was going to a meeting at Pfizer's office. It was a command performance. The CEO of Pfizer demanded to see me. I went out into the street to walk the 5 blocks between my office and Pfizer's office in New York City, and I was struck by a taxi cab. I was paralyzed from the armpits down. And at that moment, as I was strapped to a backboard being wheeled down the hall of St. Vincent's Hospital on a gurney, I realized that I was divorced, I was overweight, I was making a shit ton of money, but my life was a shambles. I was miserable. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do if this is the way my life is going to be from now on? And I did what most people do in that moment. I made a deal with God and I said, if you let me out of this, I'm going to make a change. And the change that I'm going to make is I'm going to take control of my life and I am going to work to live. I am not going to live to work. I'm going to do what I'm really passionate about. I'm going to say no to any client at any time. I will structure my business around my life so that I can live a life that's meaningful. I can live a life that is one that will make me fulfilled personally. So that's why I started my own business. And that's what I live to help people do now. I live to help people build businesses that will enable their lifestyle, whether that means growing a huge business or growing a business that's just big enough to give you what you want out of life. So I tell that story in every presentation I give. And what happens is people attach the emotion that I convey in that story to themselves and their journey in business. And what does that do? They project onto that story whatever they want from their business. So some CEOs project onto that, I want to have a $100 million business so that I can sell it and then start a foundation and, give desks to school kids in Kenya. Some CEOs will project onto that, I want to do $2 million a year in a lifestyle business, take every Friday off, and coach my kids' little league team. Some CEOs project onto that, shit, I'm in the wrong business altogether. I don't need to get hit by a cab like this guy did to figure out what I want to do with my life. I got to go figure that out now because life is too important. Time is too short. I don't want to waste that time, right? 3 different people taking 3 different messages away from the emotion that I projected. So I can help all 3 of those people, but what they've taken away from my story is the emotion, the emotional resonance. And as long as I continue to be that person and have that emotional connection with my client, that client will stay with me because my mission and their mission are aligned. That's what emotional resonance in the messaging is all about. So why did I share all of this with you within the context of lifetime loyalty? I want you to think about primacy. I want you to think about recency. I want you to think about emotional resonance as it relates to how you're communicating with your current clients now. Don't worry about how to communicate this in this way with prospects just yet. I'll help you get there. But I want you to pick 2 or 3 clients in your business and think about how you're communicating with them using the things we talked about today so that you can make a deeper connection with them. Because here's what happens. When you make that deeper connection, the clients will come to you when they have a problem, a concern, or a need, and they'll say, hey, you know what, Paul, I was thinking about how I can incorporate AI into what I'm doing right now. And, I heard you talk about AI a couple of times. What does AI look like in other businesses? They're going to ask you for advice that seemingly is outside of what you do, but that you can eventually help them with. It's about deepening relationships. And once you master the deepening of relationships with your current clients, then you can develop relationships with prospects that will be deep right from the beginning. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. Any thoughts or any questions before we wrap up for today? This will be available on the learning management system afterwards. Unfortunately, Nicola is the person who manages the learning management system, so I'm going to stumble and bumble my way through, and I'll send you all an email with how you can access it. Yes, Randy, please.
So I loved this. I have so many notes I took for myself. So thank you. This was a great topic. I think the one I struggle with the most, especially since I said earlier I'm pivoting to a different client base, is access. So when you know your avatar, you know where you want to go, figuring out the messaging, yeah. Giving the credibility, yeah. All that stuff that's doable, that's tangible. But it's the access piece that I'm struggling with. How do you get to the right people, and then not just get to them, but this continuous relationship that you talk about, the frequency?
Yeah. Okay. So great question. So access comes in a couple of different ways. You can build a brand that makes you the go-to person for something in a very narrow niche. So let's say, I don't know. Let's say you were give me an esoteric patent area. What is a really
Well, I can
narrow?
tell you my brand
Go ahead.
is SaaS. My brand is SaaS platform, software-based platform.
Perfect. So for you, what the playing the long game, okay, the long game way of getting access to people would be writing papers in a narrow area related to SaaS patents, right? Would be giving speeches at conferences where you may have to do breakout room talks, and there may only be 15 people in the breakout rooms, but those are the ideal 15 people who would be interested in your topic of patents for software as a service, right? So, or whatever topic you want to talk about, whatever the topic is. I'm just pulling stuff out of thin air, right? So, start with a narrow niche that you can dominate, and you can become the go-to person for that. And people will call you and they'll say, "I heard you were the person that I had to talk to." And that's how you get the access to start, right? To start. There's a broad way to do that. The broad way to do that is, get interviewed on CNBC for a specific topic and then share that interview everywhere. And then you're the expert and people will recognize you as the expert and they'll come to you. But, the access can come first from building that brand, start in as narrow a niche as possible and then work your way out. Second, go to the people around you who already know you, like you, and trust you. So the people who you've already built a brand with, tell us who you want to meet, and then we go to those. Let's say it's the CEO of a local SaaS that's not a startup, but they're 5 years down the road and they're just about to explode, and maybe they don't have all their IP protected. And I say, Randy, I know the perfect people. I introduce you as the intellectual property attorney who understands their technology as well as they do. So then I'm the one who gives you access. So those are the two ways to start. The long game is build the brand so that you become the go-to person, and that person, and then you'll have access. They will always take your phone call, right? The quicker way is through referrals, where somebody says Randy is the person. And then here's the second thing. Once you get that meeting, right? The very first meeting so I can get you in a room with the CEO of the company. You got to figure out how you stay there, how you get that continued access. And it's not being pigeonholed as the technology attorney. It's not being pigeonholed as an attorney at all. It's the hackneyed expression of becoming a trusted advisor, right? And my trick for doing that is asking business related questions that they don't know the answers to, but they struggle with, right? So, and there are tricks of the trade that I can teach and that I will be teaching all of you. Like, for example, when I was working with publicly traded companies, I would listen to every analyst interview that was done. If I had a meeting with a CEO or a C-level executive, I would listen to every analyst interview that was done with that C-level executive. I would read everything in the industry publications that was written about that executive. I would listen to their speeches or watch their speeches at shareholders meetings, and I would figure out what their goals were as a CEO. I would look at what board of directors members had said about them, understanding, what their pressure points were, what they were supposed to deliver on. And then I would go into those meetings having done countless hours of research. And this is in a sales meeting, right? So I'm doing 150, 200 hours of research before going into a sales meeting because I got 20 minutes with this guy. And in that 20 minutes, I got to ask him questions that get him to think that I understand him and his struggle and his industry. And he's going to want me to come back and talk about this with him again, right? So the magic questions that I asked at Pfizer at that meeting where I got that $10 million deal, I said to him, and this was, so the meeting went fine. I went in to pitch a study on Lipitor and keeping physicians writing scripts for Lipitor after Lipitor went off of patent protection. And this was 6 years before Lipitor was due to go off of patent protection. But I knew there was more we could do. So I did a Columbo. Those of you who've ever watched Columbo, at the end of the meeting, I went, CEO was Jeff Kindler. Oh, Jeff, by the way, one more thing. I was listening to the analyst call you were on last month, and something came up that was concerning to me. And he snickers because he was such an arrogant guy. He snickers and he says, "What was that?" And I said, given the lack of the budget cuts and the lack of investment that you guys are making in R&D, in the upcoming 3-year window, how are you going to keep your best scientists, your best R&D people from walking out the door? And his jaw dropped. He's like, you asked me when we started this meeting, what keeps me up at night? He's like, that's the thing that keeps me up at night. And as I'm literally leaving, I got my partner, James, and I got my briefcase in my hand. The assistant has my coat in her arm and she's opening the door to the office. And I said, if you want some help with that, we should talk some more. And I said, have a good weekend. This is a Friday. I said, have a good weekend. And I turned and walked out the door, and we're walking down the hall and the assistant grabs us and she goes, can you come back here for a minute? And I go back in the office. He's like, what did you mean by we should talk some more? I said, well, we build programs based on high level talent retention. I said, that's really what we do. We do studies on, programs like Lipitor and all that stuff. I said, but we do things like help people retain top talent. We also, by the way, help people recruit and acquire top talent. I said, so if you're ever interested in that, we could do that too. He said, we need to set up a separate meeting. And he turns to his assistant. He says, will you go with Andrea and schedule a separate meeting for that? The only reason I knew to ask that was because I had done that, like 200 hours of research in advance, right? So anytime I had a conversation with this guy after that, and I asked him a question, he always paid attention. And if I wanted a meeting with him, I could get a meeting with him. Sometimes it was 2 or 3 weeks, but he's a CEO of a Fortune 50 company. I was able to get that access because he thought I was an industry insider. I had that specific knowledge, right? I had that situational expertise. We get intimidated. Oftentimes we get intimidated because the people that we're pitching to or the people that we want to work with are these, sophisticated business people, or they're high net worth people, or they're CEOs. When the reality is, the reason that we're in front of them is because we have situational expertise that they need, right? So for us, we get access when they have a problem in our area. And the best that we can hope for is we're the name they think of when they have a problem in that area. And we're the only name they think of, or we're the first name they think of, or we're the most trusted name they think of. So what I did in that moment is I took this guy has two problems that he has to solve, right? He needs to sell more drugs and he needs to invent new drugs. And he just decided that he was going to cut his R&D budget over the next 3 years. So, well, or the company necessitated that he was going to cut his R&D budget over the next 3 years. So how is he going to keep these geniuses who are inventing stuff? You know, how are they going to keep inventing stuff if he's not going to have enough money to retain them? I knew that was something that was going to keep him up at night. I asked the question. It made me, in his mind, a situational expert in this topic. So as long as he's interested in that topic, I get access. So long-winded way of saying, use your situational expertise to be the go-to person, and then get referred in the short term. In the long term, create a brand that clearly defines you as the situational expert. You know? Is that good?
That was great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.